stop the wedding." The words cut through the music like glass shattering on stone. Malik's voice trembled, but his eyes burned with a truth no one else was ready to face. The ring slipped from his hand, clattering against the church floor as Emma froze, her secret laid bare before a sea of shocked faces. Some guests gasped. Others whispered. A few simply stood in silence, unable to process what had just been revealed. This was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives. Instead, it became the day a hidden truth destroyed everything. What could a bride hide so powerful, so devastating, that it drove her groom to abandon her at the altar? If you think you know what betrayal feels like, wait until you hear the rest of this story. Subscribe now and tell me where you're watching from, because this tale of love, lies, and loyalty will leave you questioning what you would have done. Emma grew up in a family that held its traditions close. Her mother often reminded her that every step she took carried not just her name, but the weight of generations. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was ambitious. The kind of woman who believed in hard work, in building a life where dreams didn't just sit on paper but came alive. Her wedding wasn't just about a white dress or flowers, it was about fulfillment, the chance to stand before everyone she loved and prove she had built the life her family always hoped for. From childhood, she spoke of the moment she'd walk down the aisle, and when the day finally came, she carried that dream like it was stitched into the very fabric of her gown. Malik, on the other hand, was the kind of man people noticed before he even said a word. Handsome, yes, but it was his quiet strength that made him stand out. He was known for his determination, the kind that made him rise before dawn to work and stay late until every detail was done. He loved Emma deeply, and he wanted nothing more than to give her the life she had always imagined. Friends described him as loyal, someone who valued family above everything else, someone who never let a promise fall to the ground. And in Emma, he thought he had found not just a partner but a mirror of his own values. Their love story was the kind that made people believe that patience, sacrifice, and dedication could still build something unshakable. Both families were proud of what this union meant. For Emma's family, steeped in tradition, this marriage was more than just a celebration of love, it was proof that their daughter had chosen wisely. Her father, a man of quiet authority, believed deeply in legacy and often told Emma that family honor was built brick by brick, choice by choice. Malik's family was equally invested. Respected in their community, they saw the wedding as a continuation of their reputation, a symbol that their son was not just ambitious but responsible enough to build his own household. Protective of him, they hoped Emma would be the partner to complement his drive, not hinder it. And yet, as with all unions, beneath the celebrations lingered unspoken doubts. Emma's aunt, an elder known for her wisdom, whispered a warning only a few caught. As the elders say, a drumbeat cannot be hidden. Sooner or later, its sound will be heard. It was the kind of proverb that made some guests shift uncomfortably in their seats, though no one could quite place why. At the rehearsals, when laughter filled the room and cousins teased Emma about how she'd walk in her heels, there was an undercurrent, a tension no one wanted to name. Malik's mother noticed the way Emma sometimes grew quiet when her phone buzzed, the way her eyes darted toward the door as if expecting someone. But in a house filled with flowers, chatter, and celebration, who dared to speak of unease? Tell me, if you were sitting in that rehearsal, seeing Emma's smile falter for only a second, would you have dismissed it as nerves, or would you have asked her what lay beneath the surface? In every perfect picture there are shadows the eye doesn't catch at first. For Emma and Malik, those shadows began to stretch longer in the weeks before their wedding. At first, it was easy to dismiss, the kind of things you tell yourself are normal when nerves run high. But some things refused to stay hidden. One evening, Emma's phone buzzed on the table during dinner. Malik noticed the way her eyes widened for a split second, the way her hand shot out to silence the call before he could even glance at the screen. She smiled too quickly, muttered something about work, and then changed the subject. To anyone else it might have seemed harmless. But Malik's instincts, sharp from years of reading people in business and family, felt the weight of something unspoken pressing between them. It wasn't the only time his suspicions stirred. Just days before the ceremony, Malik passed by the guest room and heard hushed voices. Emma was inside with her cousin, Zuri. The words were muffled, sharp, urgent. He couldn't catch every detail, but what he did hear made his chest tighten. He can't know, not now. It will ruin everything. Then came silence, followed by the sound of Emma's nervous laugh, as though she was trying to soften something serious. When she emerged, her eyes flicked toward him, and for a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. She reached for his hand, squeezed it as if nothing had happened, and asked about the seating chart. Malik nodded, but in the back of his mind the words clung to him like a thorn. He can't know. During one of the family gatherings, when excitement filled the house with stories, food, and laughter, Mama Rita, an elder who was known for her sharp memory and sharper wisdom, watched Emma with a gaze that cut deeper than most. She spoke softly, almost to herself, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. The river that hides a crocodile is never truly safe to swim. Her voice carried the weight of generations, the kind that made children stop in their play and elders glance knowingly at each other. Some brushed it off as one of her endless proverbs, but Malik's mother did not. She looked at Emma then, truly looked, as if searching for the crocodile hidden beneath her smile. Other small details began to line up like puzzle pieces no one wanted to solve. A bracelet Emma had worn every day for years suddenly vanished from her wrist, and when Malik asked, she shrugged it off, saying she must have misplaced it. A name appeared on the guest list. Someone neither Malik nor his family had ever heard of, someone Emma insisted on inviting without explanation. And during the rehearsal dinner, Malik caught Zuri shooting Emma a look across the table, the kind of look heavy with meaning, one that begged for secrecy. If you were Malik, standing in his shoes, seeing fragments of a truth you couldn't yet name, would you push harder for answers? Or would you convince yourself it was nothing, just the nerves of a bride-to-be? The night before the wedding should have been filled with joy, laughter, and anticipation. For Malik it was anything but. He sat alone in his room, the soft hum of distant conversations echoing through the house. The glow from the lamp cast long shadows across the walls, and in the silence, his thoughts grew louder. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He replayed Emma's silence phone calls, Zuri's whispered words, Mama Rita's proverb. His heart wanted to believe in Emma, to trust the woman he was about to marry, but his mind gnawed at every small inconsistency. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ring he would place on her finger, wondering if it symbolized unbreakable love or a promise already fractured. In another corner of the house, Omari, Malik's closest friend since childhood, wrestled with his own storm. He had stumbled across something he wished he hadn't, a truth that clung to his conscience like a weight he could not set down. He paced the room, torn between loyalty to Malik and fear of what speaking up might cause. The wedding was hours away, families were gathered, and excitement filled the air. But Omari's mind was heavy with one question. If he told Malik now, would he save him from devastation or only plunge him into it sooner? He rehearsed the words in his head, but when Malik entered the room later, Omari's lips pressed shut. The secret lived on in silence, even as his chest tightened with guilt. Meanwhile, in her own room, Emma sat at her desk with a pen trembling between her fingers. Her vows, once flowing with certainty, now came out shaky and unsure. She paused, erased, started again, her hands betraying the anxiety her face tried to hide. When she finished, she didn't place them with the rest of her wedding notes. Instead, she slid them into a sealed envelope and tucked it deep into her dresser drawer, as if burying words she couldn't risk being found. She looked in the mirror afterward, whispering to herself that tomorrow would be perfect, that love would conquer doubt. Yet the reflection staring back at her carried eyes that told a different story, eyes hiding truths that could not remain buried forever. As the night drew closer to morning, guests continued to arrive from far and wide. Relatives hugged in the hallway, children ran through the yard, and laughter filled the rooms where food was being prepared. But beneath the celebrations, tension simmered. Subtle side glances lingered a little too long, whispers floated through doorways, and more than once Malik noticed conversations falling silent the moment he entered. He smiled politely, greeted his guests, but inside he felt like an outsider in his own celebration. If you were Omari holding on to a truth that could tear everything apart, what would you have done? Would you tell Malik before the wedding and risk destroying the day he had long awaited, or would you protect him from heartbreak at least for one night? The morning of the wedding arrived bathed in sunlight, as if the sky itself had chosen to bless the day. Guests filled the hall, their laughter and chatter weaving together into a melody of joy. The air was thick with perfume, the sound of the band warming up, and the quiet rustle of dresses brushing against polished floors. When the doors finally opened and Emma appeared, all eyes turned to her. She moved gracefully down the aisle, her gown glimmering with every step, her smile carefully placed as if she believed she could hold the weight of her secrets just a little longer. Malik watched her, his heart torn between admiration and the faint echo of doubts he hadn't silenced. Still, in that moment, with family surrounding them and the ceremony unfolding, it felt almost possible that everything might fall into place. But just as the vows were about to begin, the silence of the hall broke, not with music, not with joy, but with a voice. Zuri, Emma's cousin, stood suddenly from her seat. Her hands trembled, her eyes wet with tears, but her voice carried a force that silenced the room. "He deserves to know the truth," she said, her words cutting through the still air like a blade. The guests turned, stunned, as she continued, revealing the secret Emma had fought so hard to keep hidden. Emma was not just Malik's bride-to-be. She had been living a double life, tied not only to him but to another man, a man with whom she shared a child. Gasps erupted instantly, filling the space with shock and disbelief. Some guests covered their mouths, others clutched their chests. The music faltered mid-note, the band falling into silence as though the instruments themselves understood the weight of what had been said. Malik stood frozen, his eyes fixed on Emma as though searching for denial, for some explanation that would undo what he had just heard. But Emma's tears betrayed her before she could speak. The truth was written all over her face. The room spun with whispers, voices overlapping, accusations, sympathy, disbelief. Malik's hand trembled as he held the ring he had been about to place on her finger. His lips parted, and in a voice so low yet sharp enough to silence even the whispers, he uttered, "You lied to me." The words carried more than anger. They carried the crushing weight of betrayal, the collapse of trust that had taken years to build. With that, the ring slipped from his hand, hitting the floor with a sound that echoed louder than any vow could. He turned and walked away, the sound of the doors slamming behind him leaving an emptiness in the room that no one could fill. If this moment shocks you, imagine standing in Malik's shoes, blindsided on the very day meant to mark the beginning of forever. Don't forget to subscribe, because the secrets in these stories are just beginning. The moment Malik disappeared through the doors, the wedding hall erupted into chaos. Emma's family rose from their seats, voices raised, begging the guests to remain calm, pleading for silence as if holding back the noise could somehow undo the truth. Their faces burned with humiliation, their whispers frantic as they tried to explain, to salvage the honor that had just slipped through their fingers. But Malik's family was not silent. His mother stood, her face etched with rage and heartbreak, her voice cracking as she cursed Emma for what she had done. "You've disgraced us," she cried, her words shaking with the fury of a mother whose son had been deceived at the very altar. Emma collapsed to the floor, her gown pooling around her like the weight of her own choices pressing her down. Through sobs she confessed what everyone already knew. She admitted she had hidden the truth not out of malice but out of fear. Fear of losing Malik, fear that the life she dreamed of would vanish if he ever discovered the child she had before him. "I was scared," she choked, her tears wetting her veil. "I just wanted a future with you." Her voice carried across the room, but it did little to mend the hearts she had shattered. The air felt heavier with every word. Emma begged for Malik to return, pleaded for his forgiveness as though her voice alone could draw him back through the doors. But her pleas were drowned out by Malik's father, who rose and faced Emma's family with a stare that could cut stone. His words were firm, his anger held in control but sharper for it. "You knew," he accused, his voice calm but filled with fire. "You let my son walk into this blind." The silence that followed his words spoke louder than any denial Emma's family might have offered. They avoided his eyes, their shame carved into their faces. It was then that Mama Rita spoke again, her voice steady and timeless, carrying the weight of wisdom passed down through generations. "When trust is broken," she said, "even the strongest bridge cannot carry weight." Her proverb hung in the air, a reminder that some wounds cut too deep to be mended, no matter how many apologies are offered. The guests who had once come to celebrate, now sat in stillness, some with tears, others with faces turned away, unable to look at Emma's devastation. And then, in the middle of the silence, Omari stepped forward. He was Malik's oldest friend, a man who had stood beside him since childhood. He defended Malik fiercely, vowing that his friend had never deserved such a betrayal. But with his defense came a confession of his own. His voice cracked as he admitted he had known about Emma's secret weeks before the wedding. He had discovered it by accident, but instead of speaking he stayed silent, believing it was not his place, believing perhaps Emma would come forward on her own. His words struck the room like another blow, shifting the anger from Emma to him as well. Betrayal now wore two faces, Emma's for her lies and Omari's for his silence. The air in the hall hung heavy, as though even the walls themselves mourned what had just unraveled. When Malik finally returned, he did not return for Emma's pleas, nor for his family's fury. He came back only to stand once more at the altar, to look Emma in the eyes, and to give her the answer she had begged for. His face was calm, but his silence spoke louder than any outburst could. After a long pause he simply shook his head. Then, without a word, he turned away from her once again. The echo of his footsteps carried through the hall, each step a final nail sealing the coffin of the future they were meant to share. Emma's sobs filled the silence he left behind, her voice cracking with desperation as she reached out, but Malik never looked back. The ceremony had collapsed into ruin. Guests shifted uneasily, torn between pity and judgment. Families stared each other down, years of respect and goodwill vanishing in a single night. It seemed as though nothing more could be said, no further wound could be cut deeper. But the storm was not finished. A figure rose at the back of the hall, one who had been silent throughout the chaos. His presence had been barely noticed until now. The whisper spread quickly, rippling through the guests. It was Omari, Malik's estranged brother, the man many thought had vanished from their lives for good. And then, like a second blade slicing through an already broken heart, the truth emerged. Omari was the man Emma had hidden. He was the father of her child. The revelation sent shockwaves through the hall, louder than even Zuri's earlier outburst. Some gasped, some wept, others turned their eyes away, unable to witness the magnitude of betrayal that tied two brothers together in the cruelest of ways. Emma's cries deepened, not just from shame, but from the weight of this revelation. Malik's family recoiled, their pain doubled. And Malik, already shattered, stood frozen, staring at the brother who had been both absent and now fatally present. It was no longer just betrayal by Emma. It was betrayal by blood. The silence that followed felt endless, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Finally, Mama Rita's voice cut through the tension, steady and unshaken, carrying the ancient wisdom of those who had seen generations of human failings. As the elders say, she whispered, what is hidden in the dark will always dance in the light. Did Malik walk away for good, leaving Emma and his brother buried in their own shame? Or would the shadow of this scandal haunt him forever, its echoes reaching into every step of the life he tried to rebuild? If you were Malik, standing there with the weight of betrayal crushing your chest, would you have forgiven Emma, knowing the secret she carried all this time? Or was walking away the only choice a man could make when trust had been shattered beyond repair? And let me ask you, should family honor come before love, or is true love worth forgiveness, even when it costs everything you've built? These questions are not just Malik's, they are ours too. They force us to look inward, to imagine ourselves in his shoes, in Emma's tears, in Omari's silence. And I want to hear from you. If this story gripped you, if it made you feel even a fraction of what Malik felt in that moment, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your voices inspire the next tale and perhaps the next lesson hidden within it.